Hey, cool kids. I'm a bit excited. I've got Sam here with me. Hello, Sam.
Hello, it's nice to be back. It's nice to have some time to do stuff other than childcare.
Other than childcare.
Well,
Um,
child
also,
wrangle, I would say. Child herding? Child herding.
just to make this clear, this is your child. It's
This
not.
is my child. But, how do you describe, how do you describe taking care of the toddler? It's quite hard
It's
because
it's indescribable unless you've been there. And or my toddler's now much older than that. But yeah,
teenager.
it's not really. Well, teenager herding is just. Are you going to get out of bed mostly at the moment? Anyway, you Beat Motel listeners, you are listening to a music podcast, and I need to explain something that's sonically important to this episode. We've got the builders in. We've got.
Is that a
I'm at home.
euphemism?
Got the builders in. No, got the. I'm in my home studio today, speaking to you on a very expensive and very nice microphone. So you're going to hear every little bit of spittle and everything else in this recording. But upstairs in the bathroom, we have the builders in because about 18 years ago, I put some tiles up around the shower, and it turns out you're supposed to replace the grout every now and then, otherwise the wall goes soggy and it all turns to shit. Basically, so we haven't had a bath or a shower for I don't know 5 or 6 weeks. So when
You
the
must stink.
absolutely honk. I've just been
Is that why
dunking
you're coming
myself.
to Finland?
I'm
Just to
coming to Finland to
use the
just to
water work.
give the people in the UK a break from my odor. Yeah, Sam's just revealed another little thing there. I'm going to visit him, and we're going to probably do an episode about that. So yeah, that you might hear some banging and crashing around, but to keep it on theme, the builder stroke plumber who's here is Luke from the band Power, because musicians are good networkers, and if you're going to get your bathroom repaired in a hurry, why not use a musician? In fact, it's quite cool because he's got a site radio, like that's what it's called. It's like a Makita thing, and it was covered in band stickers last time I saw it, and this time there's only one sticker left, and it's my Marin Skell sticker, which is cool because you can't keep down those stickers. They're like gaffer tape or something. Right, so do you want to reveal the theme for this episode, Sam?
Yes, today's episode is going to be about parody bands or parody music, depending on how you view the genre. And that means bands that, or music that sort of I would say, amazingly self aware about what it's doing, but also making quite a lot of heavy references, extremely heavy references to music that is already out there. It's not just comical music. It needs to be linked to certain genres, certain styles, certain bands, etc., etc. Because it's parody rather than just satire or comedy.
As usual, you've taken this in quite a deep way, which I love you for, and it'll make it very interesting. But I've just done stupid stuff mostly. No, I haven't. I'm not gonna go on too much about my choices until you've heard them.
Okay.
Oh, can you hear that? There's some drilling going
No,
on.
I can't hear that. That's very rhythmical though, so it just fits the.
It's a throbbing kind of sound.
It's experimental music behind Andrew.
I've heard some worse things at gigs I've played. Right, so
I went to see Can once at London Fields Festival. Can were playing the krautrock classic legendary krautrock band, and they did have a man with I think basically it was a barrel full of concrete and a drill, and that
oh
was one of
man.
the. And they mic'd that up, and it was horrendous. And I've never really revisited Can since. But
It's one of those things that as an audience member, I'll probably go, that's quite interesting, especially because I like, well, that's literal music concrete, isn't it? But as a musician, I'm thinking some poor bastard had to carry that in. It's like whenever you see a band with a proper Hammond organ, you think, what poor soul had to like lug that in and out of a
you
crappy
just hope.
transit
I
van?
mean, you hope the because the guy who was doing it was probably too old to do it himself. You just hope the roadie has a good insurance, a good sort of workouts.
and wearing a protective truss or something.
Yeah.
We saw Boredoms at ATP, didn't we? And one of Boredoms, he had kind of a washing up bowl full of utensils and stuff. It just looked, well, didn't sound great, to be honest. So then let's start on a high point here. Before we go into our parodies, let's have Riff of the Week. First of all, let's have Sam's Riff of the Week. Now, I don't really know how to pronounce this band name, so do you want to tell us who they are?
As far as I know, it's pronounced Chepang. They are they call themselves Immigrant Four. They're a grindcore band, really, from Nepal, who live in New York City in the USA, and they've just put out a new album, and I really liked the album, and I just wanted to share that with people. And this is one of the riffs. The problem with choosing grindcore stuff is that if we do the whole 30 seconds, which we do the whole 30 seconds, that can be an entire grindcore song. So, but still, let's do the whole 30 seconds.
Let's do the 30 seconds. Here we go. Chepang with this one's called GC. Whoa. Now, the way this works, when we do Riff of the Week or any of the music choices or anything, I always ask Sam just to send me his choices. I then have to go and extract the audio from wherever I can find it. And I was quite surprised that song is only about a minute and a half long, but that 30 seconds encompasses about 4 different parts. Yeah. I thought that was actually quite a broad representation. There's tons there, but that's nuts.
Yeah, and it's an interesting album as well. It's got, I bought the vinyl of it, and it's got 4 sides to it.
4 sides? Isn't that a
4
cube?
sides. The first album is pretty much an album, as far as I can tell. And then the third side is them collaborating with a load of other people, including people from quite, I wouldn't say big. There's no grindcore band apart from Napalm Death is probably that big.
They're not that big.
Sort of notable grindcore band called Gridlink, who are quite experimental. The guitarists from that, they got drummers. I think the drummer from the current Megadeth drummers on it, and then at the end of it, they remix the whole album. The last side D, they remix the whole album together, and it's just this one sort of experimental piece of music. And a lot of the tracks on the side with collaborations are 2 drummers, and so there's guitarists and bassists and drummers and vocalists everywhere, all coming in at different things. And then the first album, which they just kept to the 4 or 5 of them, I don't know how many are in the band itself, they did this sort of like it's mixed together. These grindcore songs are mixed together with this sort of floating music, and I played it in front of my partner and our child. My partner didn't like it, but our child was having a great time with this pull and push of like this floating sort of ethereal stuff, and then sort of the madness of grindcore. For like a minute and a half, 30 seconds, and then going back to this ethereal stuff. So this album
kind of it's ideal toddler music, grindcore, isn't it? Izzy used to really like metal. Oh, I just doxed my daughter, but my daughter used to really like metal when she was younger. She called it big music, and she'd always ask for the big music, which does make sense. But I mean, if anyone's listening to this who isn't into grindcore, I can remember the first time I heard it and just thought, what the fuck is this nonsense? But there's so much joy and so much experimentation. I mean, just what you described about, the 4th side of the record. I love stuff like that. There's a band who I'm hoping to interview the singer of soon, a guy called Ed, who was in a band called The Big. And they were a ska band, but their second album was a 2-disc jobby. And the first one was the ska album. And the second one was all the same songs, but done in lots and lots of different styles, like really noticeably the same songs, like quite deliberately. So there was a blues one, a folk one. Oh, it's just that's just so cool. Yeah, I'm quite excited by that track. I don't know if I can last the whole album, but I'm not sure anyone does sit down with smoke a pipe and sip at brandy whilst listening to a grindcore album start to finish.
I might do it after a long day. I did listen to the album first time. It's I'm trying to disassociate when I listen to. I need sort of mood music when I drive, and so when I can't listen to metal or particularly grindcore or punk rock when I drive because I get too aggressive. Um, but I did listen to that just out of curiosity, and I managed to sort of stay in lane and around the speed limit.
I don't tend to listen to a lot of extreme metal when I'm driving, mostly because on a motorway, even if you've got quite a nice sound system, the sonics are just lost. And that goes for quite a lot of genres, actually, but you lose all the subtlety. And I remember the first
In
time I
that
heard the
case,
first.
in that case, Andrew, if you want to understand Metallica, particularly modern Metallica, listen to them on the highway.
Oh,
I
really?
promise you. Yeah, that or doing exercise because they've
So
got this.
they just cut through.
They cut through because they have this, and Pantera might have the same thing. But if you listen to this, is going off track. But this, if you listen, I have this theory. I was cycling along and I was listening to the new Metallica album, and I was listening to on these Bose headphones, these wanky headphones I bought, which have a little microphone above your ear. Rather than being in your ear is completely open to the world around you. So
Hmm.
sometimes roadworks, traffic, etc., drown it out. But when you can hear the music, you need really well spaced instrumentation. And Metallica's production, since I'd say the Black Album, has done that better than anybody else. And
Hmm.
so you can actually, so rather than a lot of sort of modern like metal where it's really uh, it sounds really good when you're sat down listening to it in the bus or something like that, or at home on a stereo system. Um, but there's not actually a lot of separation in the drums, particularly the drums. It all sounds like quite condensed. Whereas Metallica, you can really hear the kick and the snare, and it really drives you because there's a lot of space. And this is going to become my defense of Lars Ulrich is that he is not a great technical drummer, but he understands space within drumming better
Hmm.
than I'd say almost every other drummer around. And therefore, when you do something else with Metallica, when it's a bit buzzy, you can actually hear Metallica, what the details of the songs are. And the other aspect I want to say about the new Metallica album, this is my final part of the review, this has been in my head, is Lars Ulrich and a lot of he's the drummer. In a lot of interviews, he's been talking about trying to get into shape with Peloton, the cycling home
Hmm.
cycling kit. And my theory is that he is Metallica's a really good album, a really good band to do exercise for because this is how he listens to the music, home edits. When he's sort of listening to the day's production, he goes on his Peloton bike and he listens to it and he gets into a rhythm with it. And actually, it really works. Metallica is a really good band to do exercise to because they push and pull rhythms, they groove, and then they speed up, and then they have all these sort of like. So it's like you have intense bursts of speed with Metallica these days, but then they pull back and they sort of go in this AC/DC rhythm, and then they speed up again, and it's really good to do exercise because you pace yourself with it.
We
That's my
are gonna
theory.
we are gonna do a whole episode on music to exercise to.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna pull at that thread for now. I very much enjoyed that though. Right, so let's get on to my riff of the week.
Yes.
Now
Sorry.
I've
Yes.
chosen somebody who's very famous for playing saxophone, but the bit I'm going to play you isn't the riff for the saxophone. It's something I really like about this particular. Oh, don't want just say what it is. It's John Coltrane, Love Supreme. Going to play a bit of part 3, which is Pursuance. And one of the things I really love about that album is that obviously the saxophone is the star. He's absolutely the big thing, but there's actually a hell of a lot of really, really cool stuff going on in the background. So I'm going to play you a bit that the bass is cool, but the bass is largely doing what I would expect the bass in a John Coltrane thing to do. It's doing the walking kind of riff thing, which is nice. But just listen out for the piano. I just thought it was just a cool example of the way the album flows through textures. Here we go. What do you think?
Yeah, it's amazing. Who's the pianist?
Oh God, I probably should have looked that up, shouldn't I?
This is like a key thing in jazz listening. You have to name all the instruments. The guy called McCoy Turner. He's sort of a legend in his own right. But yeah, it's really. I think actually that's a really nice way of listening to jazz, is highlighting sort of just listen to this section. Actually, listen to jazz in 30 seconds. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
good.
horrible tease. I know. I'm just looking up who the drum pianist was. Piano. Help if I can spell piano. Bollocks if I can find it. Oh well, that'll leave people screaming. They can go look it up, can't they? Everyone knows how to use Google. Confusingly, on the Wikipedia page though, it's got a picture of Carlos Santana.
Are you
Who
sure you're
I'm.
looking at the right thing?
Yeah. Hang on, there's a picture of like the A Team on this page, and like there's some sort of vegetable peeling. No, I don't know what the hell I'm looking at. Let's move on. What blew my mind when I clipped that, when I kind of got the audio, so I was listening to it, going, yeah, listening to the tinkly bit, the sort of the melody line of the piano, but the left hand, the things that's doing, I'm assuming it's one take. I'm pretty sure all those albums were live. If that's one take, the separation that pianist has got in their head between what their left hand is doing and what the right hand is doing is absolutely mind-blowing. You and I both play bass. When you play bass, you do a string, that shows how skilled I am. You do a string with your string doing plucking hand, and then the other hand on the bendy bit, the string, the pointy long the neck, it's kind of mostly happening at the same time, unless you're doing hammer-ons or slides or something. But he's doing two people's jobs. It's like
Yeah,
sometimes I think some musicians should get paid twice. Like you see drummers of well, actually most black metal bands, I think the drummers should get paid more because they're doing considerably more. I saw Death Haven, and
Death
they just
Billing
like
and that. Yeah,
the drummers really putting in the work.
I think that's a fair point. But yeah, back in the band Pissed Resistance, our drummer Will, he, bless him, at one point I think in a practice was trying to do a drum beat where his, I think, ambition at one point was to try and get every limb doing a different time signature.
One man polyrhythms.
Yeah, yeah. And there are people who do that. I think Rush, the drummer, the Neil Peart was
Mm-hmm.
Neil Peart, the Rush drummer. I think he did that sort of thing of like, you know, and I'm pretty sure Steve Copeland does that sort of thing. But yeah, but that's prog rock, and
It is, but
that's
Neil Peart breaks the golden rule of drummers. Generally, the better the drummer, the fewer the drums they have. A lot of the drummers I really, really like just have, play a 3-piece or a 4-piece, really small kits. But Neil Peart looks like he's trying to build himself a defensive wall against an army of oncoming orcs or something. I think he went into the
that's
drum shop and said, "I'll take the shop."
that's. God bless rototoms. Those are those toms, for people who don't know. Those are those toms that you can tune as you play them, and they go. And the Primus drum was very into them, but he's also very into Neil Peart. We should do. That's another thing. Drummers,
Oh, right. I
best.
need to make a note of this. I'm going to do it now. You probably hear me clacking on the keyboards. Carry on. Sorry, you don't need to.
No, it's
Well, I've
but
got
yeah. Oh no, I think your point about McCoy Turner, the pianist in that track, from
You found
Coltrane.
it. Well done.
Yeah, he's very yeah. Well, what can you say about him? I have no lexicon to talk about jazz, frankly. He is a good ponker, plinker ponker. It's very impressive.
I do. I know someone who I'm kind of plundering a group of friends at the moment for guests, and I'm recording later today with someone. We're going to do an episode on the Fall, but I I sorry, my phone was ringing in my ear then, so I'll just switch that off. That I have got a friend who's done. I've seen him do a really good talk on jazz, so I'm going to hopefully get him along at some point. But yeah, good plinky plonky. Right, look, we're 20 minutes in and we haven't even started on the parodies yet, so I think we ought to just kind of forge on. And this is your first choice. The first one. Oh man, what is it? People keep ringing me. Right, I'm going to put my phone on flight mode now because that's 2 calls in a row, and then I'll forget it's on flight mode and have a lovely peaceful day. Right, that's done. Right then. So yeah, I was really surprised with your first choice because it's not a band I don't see them as a parody band. So the band is good, clean fun, and the track is "Song for the Lady." So I'll play it, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of jab in the ribs to explain yourself. Then explain yourself. Here we go. Your new tattoos, they look first rate. You wonder why you can't get a date. Sexism sucks dick and in the 80s. Hardcore still needs another song for the ladies. Girlfriend or break, please don't get me wrong. It's time to put down that coat and come sing along. Cause I carry your voice from the back of the crowd. Move to the front and shout it out loud. Keep your eyes on the prize, you know what I mean. If we can't change the world, then let's hit the scene. You think equal rights means equal hits. We're sick of all your tough guy shit. As you leave. I've just realised why I was so surprised because I was confusing good, clean fun with no means no. And I was thinking, God, they sound really different to what I've heard before. And also, I was like, where's that lovely kind of. Anyway, good, clean fun. Song for the Ladies. So.
Gone for the Ladies, yeah.
Go
They
for it.
are early 2000s hardcore parody band. They are. I still see them as a corrective to, and hardcore really needs this every so often because it's very, in America, to use an Americanism, a very a genre, a scene that is very easy, that it very easily falls into this bro sort of lots of. I went. There's a great line. Oh no, it's a bit homophobic these days. There's a line in a Sick of It All, Sick of It All, in the song between the song Banter, Sick of It All album, which is their live album, I think live album, which was the singer who seems like a cool guy. I don't think he is homophobic.
Can't be
But the
Welsh,
line
not
is
Shelby.
just the line's dated essentially, and it basically says this. Let's hear it for the ladies here, because otherwise, basically, this would just be a bunch of topless men rubbing themselves against each other.
That's not homophobic, it's just true. It's funny. So,
So this band, I sort of see, you know, Sick of All sort of they've fallen into this macho bullshit culture, and hardcore needs this corrective every so often of like, or any genre, any sort of punk rock male dominated genre really needs a corrective. And Good Clean Fun were quite a nice sort of. They wrote really catchy hardcore punk songs in that early 2000s style, 1990s style, and they sounded great. Really great gang choruses. They were catchy, really well sort of put together song, but all the lyrics were sort of. I think it captures a really good parody, which is that it is parody bands tend to be in love with the music they're taking the piss out of, and there's a lot of love there for hardcore, but there's also a lot of like, stop taking yourself so seriously, guys. You are also stop being assholes.
well, good message. I can get behind that. It's just it's made me think that for a lot of the choices, and obviously I know what's coming up. A lot of the choices, the lyrics, the vocals are really what makes it parody. There is one exception, which is going to be my first choice actually. But yeah, if it's not for the lyrics, so if you couldn't understand the language that they're singing, then how would you know it's parody? Which means we're missing out on a lot of non-English language parody music.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's always, and that's the thing of like not knowing, understanding. That's always scared me about listening to music or language I don't understand. Um, in a way of sort of like, is there a joke here that I'm not getting? Or if I think this is a bit of a joke, is that offensive? And this is, like there's always sort of a thought that goes through my head when I listen to particularly highly stylized music but where the singer is not singing in English. Um,
We've got a note to do an episode about the best songs not sung in English. So I think it's a really interesting thing. But one of the choices I was going to make for listeners, if you've not heard before, we've got 4 choices each here. I was going to choose Plastic Bertrand Band with Sans Plan Pour Moi, which, as I understand it, is taking the piss out of throwaway punk music. And it became a throwaway punk music hit quite brilliantly. But I thought that's not in English, but I won't pull at that thread. Anything to add on Song for the Ladies by Good Clean Fun before we move on?
no, it's good. Let's
Okay,
go.
so next one. This is a band. I think you were with me when I saw this band supporting The Sword. This is Gentleman's Pistols with I Wouldn't Let You. And my God, it was difficult to choose a track from this band because some of the riffs are so good. But anyway, I will shut up and I will click the thing and we will listen to Gentleman's Pistols, I Wouldn't Let You. I really enjoyed that. But I was flicking through the tracks. This is Gentleman's Pistol. It's from an album called At Her Majesty's Pleasure, I think. And when I was flicking through the tracks trying to choose which one, my wife in the other room just went, "This is brilliant. What's this?" Because it's really good. The vocals. I mean, it's clearly a pastiche of, I guess, early 70s Thin Lizzy rock. Rock with a RAWK, but when we saw them live, it's played with such perfect observance. Even the singer had like a bob cut, like a Purdy cut, and the instruments they were wearing and the sound, they were just so spot on that I kind of have to think, well, is it parody or is it just that thing that metal bands do, where you choose a genre and you just try and do it better than everyone else does it? I mean, the lyrics are absurd, which I think is what probably does make them a parody band.
But I think this is goes. I think this is that question of like. I think you have a good point. Like the music is both sort of a loving homage to it, but also it is sort of it is very self-aware. And I think that self-awareness is what brings parody into account. But that is mostly transferred, I feel, not almost made um, most obvious with parody, with the lyrics. And I've also just remembered 2 bands that I wish I had included on the list, and I didn't. So
That's the
I'm
curse
sorry.
of doing this, isn't it?
Yeah, What Tyler and Hardskin. I'm sorry, you should have been here. Particularly Hardskin, whose second album is one of my favorite. Is probably the only Oi album that I actually like. Um, and anyway, sorry, back to this. Yeah, I mean, and so much of. I was going to ask you, what do you think makes them stand out compared to, say, other bands that are doing this style of music today?
Probably because they're not massively serious.
Hmm.
I went through a phase of reading classic rock magazine because I never really, apart from Led Zeppelin, I never really got that kind of 70s rock thing. It just it didn't pass me by because I wasn't fucking born. But I never got it. So I went through a phase of reading classic rock magazine, treating it almost as you might a historical journal or something. And I think the writing is really, it was a joy just to read. So I could pick out Thin Lizzy. I could probably only pick out a few tracks, but there are bands going now that do it and take it very, very seriously, which is not my place to judge anyone for that. But because you and I are from a slightly more extreme or more punk thing, we're always looking for people who push the envelope. And doing it with all seriousness in 2023 doesn't interest me in the slightest. Whereas doing it in the way that Gentleman's Pistols do, I mean, just starting and immediately going into the dual guitar thing, it's just, and then the junk. The whole album is full of cliches in the most brilliant way, but it's that self-awareness that I think makes it entertaining. I don't really. I see bands all the time. I did an episode a while ago about Ipswich Music Day. It's full of bands trying to do rock seriously. I just couldn't give a shit. Could not give a shit at all. I want someone wearing a paisley shirt with a bob haircut.
But I think this is the thing, is that like this is why I think parody is also about the love of the music, because it is sort of going, you have to take that self-awareness and do it very self-aware, but also really like, I don't give two shits what people think of me aspect as well. There's sort of like there's a contradiction inherent in it of like, you have parody has to know what it's doing, but also not give a shit enough to do it well. Has to not give a shit enough to think things through that much and to self-edit.
Cool. Yeah, I wasn't going to raise it, but one of my bands, Zeeb, we did a parody album, and we decided not to self-censor at all. And I'm kind of a little ashamed of it now. Now I look back and think, actually, there was nothing nasty, so nothing that I would be really ashamed of, but just the use of language. And when we sent it out for review, we got absolutely ripped to shit because we didn't make it clear enough that it was a parody or a comment. We were commenting on stupid bloke rock, basically, but we clearly didn't make that clear, and we got some very nasty things said about us.
Was that your second album?
Yeah, I can't even remember what it's called, Gargantuan something. But
I think, despite the lyrics, that's my favourite album of yours. What's the lyric about Johnny Cash? Let's not go there. Let's not repeat that. I just remembered what it.
It's one of the few I remember. No. You don't want me to say it, do you? But
if anybody wants to, I'm sure this album's available on Bandcamp, and Andrew can put a link to it. Give yourself a treat of self-discovery and make your estimation of Andrew full considerably.
Drop through the floor. Oh God! No, musically that album was a blast because we set out to do a very specific thing, and it was to just make something
great on that album. It sounds. Seriously, I think the joy in playing of that, and this is the thing. I think what happens with the best parody bands is the joy of playing music and repeat, and it just comes through. It's like, okay, we're taking the piss out of it, but at the same time, come on, you're not going to do it because you dislike the basis of the music. You dislike maybe what it has become when it takes itself too seriously. But parody is a corrective, and it's a necessary one, I think.
I had more fun on stage during that second album kind of phase than I did at any other time in that band, I think, apart from the initial kind of burst of suddenly people actually liking something I was making. But on stage, it was a riot because we were like, right, I want to write a song that's got a bit on bass where I can just use bass chords and I can just really fucking grind it. Then in this other song, I want a shredding bass solo where there really doesn't need to be one, and it was great fun. The problem we had is that we built up such a head of pressure for people expecting that kind of thing that when the third album came and we didn't want to do that anymore, we made an album that kind of sucked. It's not great. Although that saying, it does end with a 15-minute long bass solo that was just me playing, which even I've not listened to since we recorded it, because who would want to listen to that? Anyway, we ought to move on. So next choice from you is it Beatallica?
Beatallica.
Beatallica.
No, Beatallica.
Beatallica. Right. I don't know what Allica's done to deserve that, but the song is Justice for All My Loving God.
Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. The hammer crushes you. Justice is seeking no true. And then while I'm away, I can't believe the price you pay. As I said justice for all my loving to you. I'll pretend that I'm kissing, but
That's still going on. Right. So your reaction to that, because listeners, Sam and I can see each other through the magic of the interwebs. About 5 seconds in, you laughed, and then you stopped laughing, and you started looking at something else on your desk or something. Which I think, for that type of parody band, you kind of go, oh, that's amusing, and that's it.
Their band. They are quite obviously a mixture of the Beatles and Metallica, and they use, I think, mostly Beatles chord changes over Metallica rhythms, and I have a deep endearing love for them because they were a band that I sort of discovered in the early 2000s and sort of I would say the middle ages of the dark ages of downloading stuff on the internet. But they put all their stuff up for free at the time, and I was I was actually looking up when they were originally around because it was that 2001 period, and I loved it as a sort of a weird art project. Again, it's sort of the love of the Beatles and Metallica comes through. It's sort of that thing. James, the vocalist is more James Hetfield than James Hetfield, uh, in a way, and yeah, it's just such a ridiculous sort of concept, but at the same time I grew up on Beatles because my mum loved the Beatles, and my first music teacher loved the Beatles. So we sang Beatles songs at school during our music lessons when I was 5 years old. And so I grew up with the Beatles, all of these melodies, and then to hear them transposed to this rhythm that meant so much to me as growing up as a teenager, the Metallica rhythms, thrash rhythms. It's sort of like it was like, oh, this is just fantastic. I just find it quite an exciting, strange thing. And yeah, I loved it. I haven't listened to it since those days, but I still have this enduring sort of. It's a nostalgic thing for me, and I think in a weird way that's what they are as a band. They're sort of an endearing nostalgia. Yeah.
I when I clipped it, I thought, right, that song, fair enough, and I thought, surely they can't drag this out that long. Although it does kind of work, it does kind of make sense.
Oh, how many albums have they got now? They've got one, two, three, four. They've released 4 albums, including the Devolver album.
It's the names that I really like. They work so nicely for making things. I thought they're sort of slightly Motorhead as well as being kind of slightly metal, but Devolver.
Yeah, they have this is a title. This is EPs included: A Garage Day's Night, Beatallica, self-titled, Sergeant Hetfield's Motor Breath Pub Band.
That's my favourite. That's my favourite title. That's awesome. That's so good.
All you need is blood. Masterful Mystery Tour, Winter Plunderland, Abbey Load. I like that one. And the Devolver.
Hey, dude. Just so fucking obvious. Oh man.
Hey, dude. Oh yeah, that's a great one.
Although I think Sergeant Hetfield's Motor Breath, whatever the rest was, is good. But I think one of my favourites as well. I want to choke your band. Oh God, Leopard Madonna. I mean, it kind of it just writes itself. I guess they're going to run out of Beatles albums at some point, but just wow.
Yeah, I have. They're nostalgic listen to me, but I also think that they're sort of like an interesting project because they also prove that you can play very melodic chord changes at that pace, and why more people don't do that sort of thing is sad to me. I think they should
Oh, you
be.
just meant just as a whole in metal. Yeah, I've never really learned music theory behind things. You get that thing where people write, oh, the chord progression's I, V, V, I, something. I don't understand what that is, and that's probably quite clear in the music I make. But yeah, thanks for that. That was that was entertaining. Sorry, instead of Helter Skelter, it's Helvester of Skeller. just what? Oh dear, blackened the USSR. Just marvelous. I mean, just looking them up. I like everyone's got a ticket to ride except you. I think is what it is. I'm gonna have to click on it. No, it's everyone's got a ticket to ride except for me and my lightning. It's like they're just cramming together. Like they're doing compound. Like Germans have compound verbs where they just join words together to make big words. That's basically what they're doing with Beatles
It's marvelous.
titles.
It's marvelous.
Yeah, my life
And they are
feels up.
they are joy to listen to because they play. They do exactly. If you like the Beatles and you like Metallica, listen to Beatallica. You won't be disappointed.
It's like an 80s TiVo in a TV commercial. Oh man, available only by mail order. Right, let's have another one now. We're sticking with the Beatles, and this clearly isn't the Beatles. This is Frank Zappa. And you mentioned earlier about the dark days or the good days of downloading. When Napster first came around, I know, late, it must have been early 2000s. One of the things I really loved about it, and one of the things that I miss, is that you would find these rarities. You'd find things that you just didn't even know existed. And I'm quite amazed I managed to track this down. So this is Frank Zappa with Louisiana Hooker with Herpes.
Suddenly someone is there at commercial. The girl with the P.O. surprise. Louisiana hooker with herpes. Last chance to say it. Louisiana hooker with herpes. I can't hear you. Louisiana hooker with.
So there you go. Now, 30 seconds doesn't do that justice because, for one thing, it's the genius of Frank Zappa, and his band is without a doubt going to be better musicians than the Beatles. They're just fucking phenomenal. Everything, whether it's Mother's Invention or just anything else he does. That being said, I'm not a die-hard fan. I think a lot of it's quite inaccessible. But if you look up the whole of that song, it's what they've done. They're not just going, oh, we're putting rude words in, we're putting sex words in. It is... They've actually crafted the whole song into a whole nother story of a TV evangelist being caught out. And it's beautifully structured. Yeah, they're fucking around and they're going, listen, we're saying herpes. But there's a bit more to it than that. I mean, I assume there is only live versions. That's all I could find. I mean, the Swanee whistle, I can't do an impression of a Swanee whistle. I mean, stuff like that is a bit kind of on the nose, if that's the right phrase. But screw it, it's Frank Zappa. He can do what he wants.
Well, this is interesting. I mean, I with you, I never got into Frank Zappa that much. I tried. I think he's, but he pastiched a lot. So I like his Ruben and the Jets. I like that album quite a lot because I do think he was sort of. Is he parody? Is he comedy? Is he overly serious? I don't think he was ever overly serious. I think he was very intellectual.
I don't think that could be levelled at Frank Zappa.
And I think a lot of his times his lyrics have aged quite badly because he I don't know if he was a misogynist, but they come over as quite misogynistic.
I've been reading. I gave up on it because I think it was a bit dreadful, but. the famous groupie book.
Mm.
I can't even remember the name of the person who wrote it. And there's a lot about Frank Zappa in that. He formed a band, or he encouraged these girls, kind of groupies, to form a band. I can't remember what they're called. Girls Together Outrageously. And no, I think he actually came across as quite the opposite. He was quite nurturing when people. I'm getting this all from this one book called "I'm with the Band." He's quite nurturing in that until a couple of them get into heroin, and then he basically excommunicates them.
Oh yeah, I think I can imagine he's been quite a Puritan. Yeah,
Heroin's pretty bad. I mean, I don't think anyone here is listening going, "Oh, I'll give it a go."
Yeah, it's but yeah. I think Frank Zappa to me is one of like he's sort of like he's one of those artists, I guess, in the same way like I would say I appreciate Jackson Pollock. I'm glad someone did the experiment. I'm not sure I really want to spend that much time with it.
That's a really good summary. The only album I own is one of the late '60s Mothers of Inventions album, which is a live album called Just Another Band from LA, which only has about 4 songs on it, but the first song is about 40 minutes long. It's called Billy the Mountain, and it's basically a whole opera thing. Brilliant.
Well, this is the thing. I think him and Charles Mingus did this really interesting thing, where Charles Mingus was trying to breach, I guess, following in the footsteps of Duke Ellington, breach sort of the line between composition and jazz. Frank Zappa was trying to breach the line between, and this is based on very little information. I'm sorry for any Frank Zappa fans, but my understanding is that he sort of was between the lines of basically sort of that rock scene and composition as well. He was an incredible composer. I just don't particularly understand the music, and that's not my. I don't think that's particularly wrong.
I think one day I'll get it. There's several bands I feel that way about. The Clash being one of them, because where he's interesting, Jimmy Page was quite talented, and he showed that off live by just playing as many notes as he could. It's just bollocks. It doesn't make any sense. It's just, I don't get that. Whereas Frank Zappa appears to have almost too much restraint. Anyway, enough Frank Zappa chat. Let's. I can't find a link between Frank Zappa and your next choice. I'm going to play it, and you can explain it afterwards.
Okay.
Here we go. Boo.
It's time that we let the world know. Bitch, your vag look like Janet Reno. Awkwafina's a genius, and her vagina is 50 times better than a penis. It's time that we let the world know. Bitch, your vag look like Janet Reno. Awkwafina's a genius, and her vagina is 50 times better than a penis. My vag got built-in utilities. Your fat ass is on disability. My vag, a Beyonce weave. Your vag, a polyester Kmart hairpiece.
Awkwafina with My Vag. So, Sam.
It's so nice. It's so nice to hear a woman, talking about the strengths of her vagina. Because so often in hip hop, it's just, big dicks everywhere. Whereas this is all about how wonderful pussies are. Excuse the word. And I don't have much to add to it. I think it's a parody of. It's a sort of a cover of a track from some other rapper I have no idea about, and I just heard this song and it just made me laugh quite a lot, and I just thought it was a really good take, really sort of like very puerile take on the whole sort of dick swinging that goes on a little bit too, well, it goes on far too much for my taste in.
All aspects of life.
All aspects of life, and it's just like, oh no, this is cool. She's cool. This is funny, and it's and genuinely funny lyrics. Again, and it's sort of, I don't know. Yeah, I just really liked the sort of the take on it. It felt fresh at the time.
It's interesting because when I first heard it, I just took it on face value and just kind of thought, well, this is quite cool. But sort of the more it sort of mulls over in my mind, the cooler I think it is, because it's not. I am a cisgender white male here, but it's not. It's not saying, "Hey, I've got the solution. This is the answer." It's just going, "Look, this is a fun little thing that we're just going to muck around with." And
Don't call women's vaginas fun little things.
let's move on to something very very silly. But when I heard it, I was surprised just how much I really liked it. For fuck's sake, Sam.
I'm sorry.
Like Terminator being filmed in Aberdeen, so alone. When people stop and stare, like C-3PO but with pubes and hair.
Robot lab. Robotic race dancing.
The doctor staying in the nut egg said he was in a case cause he stick sprayed silver egg cans on his face, sucking off antennas and trying to fuck the fridge and burn his pubic wig with a high voltage.
I yams as rosebuds, mine's primes, dies reactives, is twos, goes twos the shops. Am's boys, turns fags, doos.
Just Goldie looking chain with half man, half machine. I found difficulty choosing which 30 seconds of that track, but that one encompassed the line like CP3O but with pubes and hair. And I love the way he does the robot voice just by adding like an S to the end of it. It doesn't really make a lick of fucking sense at all. But Eyes, Am, Zays, robots. I don't know why. It just that's old now, and you know, I guess other people might have chosen Your Mother's Got a Penis as the track, but I didn't choose that because it's still funny, but it's too obvious. This guy dressing up as a robot to go to the shop and buy 10 fags is just there's something so British about it. I don't know, it's so like the aspiration. It's not like the other line like Terminator being filmed in Aberdeen. But just not like, hey, I'm a robot, we're going to take over the world. It's like, I'm a robot and I'm going to come buy not even 20 fags, just 10. It's just so, I don't know, it's so basic. And amazingly, they're on East West, big label with a proud history. And the production on that is ropey as shit. I don't know why they didn't do it better, but East West have a bit of a. There's another band which is going to be my last choice who did the same thing. Album on East West was shite production. Second album on East West with good production that didn't do as well. So maybe the producers are just geniuses. But I like the whole Goldie Lookin Chain story. It is a bunch of knobs. It's a bunch of blokes. It's I did a Wu-Tang episode a few weeks ago about American Saga, which incidentally the third season is brilliant if anyone's not started watching it yet. But the thing I like about that, RZA in that basically gathers friends together and he gets them to improve each other and out-rap each other, and he's very much his collective. And it's a similar story with Goldie Lookin Chain, as I understand it. It is someone who was taking hip-hop very seriously and just fancied having a laugh with his mates. I'd like to find out more, but when I was using Twitter more, I'd follow them on Twitter, and they're just funny. They're just amusing, kind of. We saw them at Reading Festival. They were filling in for someone who dropped out, and they hired loads of invalid carts and did them up, and were like racing around the Reading Festival on them. Clearly, like a band is like, hey, we've suddenly got money, but we don't know what to do with it, so just gonna fuck around. I mean, do you have anything to add about Goldie Lookin Chain?
No. I thought it was interesting. It's like. Yeah, I think the self-awareness in hip hop can go two ways. You can go like the sort of empowerment way in a way, which I think the Awkwafina version becomes, or you can just go like the stupid, but funny. And I personally think there's something very British about the sense of humor that Goldie Lookin Chain espouse, and I think it wouldn't translate anywhere else because it's sort of there's something of the small town humor in it, and it is fantastic fun, and yeah, I just don't
Yay.
think the Americans would really get it.
Well, I'm guessing none of them made millions, although weirdly, Maggot, one of them, who I think is the one rapping as the robot, went on to win Celebrity Big Brother. It's very strange. I thought it was cool, actually. He came across cool as shit. He just seemed such a proper human being rather than a pastiche of a human being. But anyway, let's move on, because your next track is someone I'd never heard of called Jud Jud. And the track is Hi-Hat Song, and I don't know if I got the right version or not, but I'm going to play it, and then I can ask Sam why he's gesturing at me in the way he is. Here we go. Is that it? I can't really tell which guy it is. I think it's finished. What the fuck is that? I mean, is that the right version? Because this is the demo version.
Yeah. This is
Oh.
acapella hardcore.
Hardcore, is that what it is? I thought it was like technical. I couldn't figure it out. I thought it was techno or something. And when I found the album, there's a lot of songs. I thought, right, maybe this is just like an intro track or something. So I flicked through. It's all the fucking same. It's all that. Are they saying Judd in all of the tracks as well?
Yeah.
I found this on Tidal. I didn't have to like go digging for it. It was very accessible.
It's called the Hi-Hat Song because it's got in it.
Just how did you even know that exists?
My friend Andy, our friend Andy, when I lived with him very briefly, I believe it was when I lived with him very briefly, there was a punk rock shop in Brighton which was very sadly closed down, and punk
Which
rock
one?
record shop.
Bunker Bunker?
Bunker Bunker.
Yeah.
This is a demo released on No Idea.
No way.
No
really?
Idea were sort of like the American label at the time. They put out Against Me. They put out a whole host of other bands who were great, and then they also put out this really weird a cappella hardcore thing. And apparently they did it live as well.
I just would love to see that, being a hardcore show and just seeing that in the middle.
Yeah.
That's what you should do if you make money from a label. You should put out weird shit. That is absolutely what you should do.
Stuff that makes you laugh. And again, it's like I kick myself now because I forgot about what Tyler and Hardskin, but Jud Jud are just like, they're also taking the piss. Again, it's like good, clean fun, but just an extreme version of it.
Cheaper to
they
record.
have the whole X's between the names, which is why I was holding my hand up.
I get it now. I couldn't figure out why the demo had X's all over it. Now I know it's hardcore. That makes total sense. Yeah.
And it's all linked to the straight edge movement, and there's a certain aspect of the straight edge movement which takes itself so seriously, in the same way that a lot of black metal bands take themselves so seriously, that just leads them to parody.
Yeah. Oh god, it's so easy. It's like black metal. It's just like, why bother? You don't need a parody black metal band because there are black metal bands doing it without knowing they're parodies.
Exactly, and this is sort of, it's also the same. It's the sort of the same, and it's just I don't know. It's a joyous, weird piece of
just
culture.
Wild.
Late early 2000s culture. Wonderful, weird. What the fuck was going on that they actually put that out?
That's just wow. Thank you, Sam. This has been really good fun, but we are running out of time, so I'm going to play the last track now. I might have to explain what it is. It's a band called the Shirehorses, and they're not a band really, but there's a guy called Mark Radcliffe who's a radio presenter. He produced loads of Peel sessions in the early 80s and went on in the early 90s to have a late night show that I absolutely adored, where it was sort of after the evening session, which was Steve Lurpak and fuck, I've forgotten her name.
The pack of the Butter family.
Stephen Mack and Joe Wiley. So they were like the indie show, and then you had obviously John Peel late at night. There was just whatever he fancied playing. But in the middle, there was Mark Radcliffe's show, and he was joined sometimes, a lot of the time, by a guy called Mark Riley, who he referred to as Lard. And Mark Riley was in the Fall for quite a while, until Marky Smith booted him out, and the press release said it's because he was a fucking idiot or something like that. It was just a really odd, stupid reason. But they used to have bands play on the show, and they weren't comedy at all. They did some really funny things, like they did a Musician's Guide to Music, which I've got on tape somewhere, and I wish I still had, because my wife and I still quote bits of it. But they, I don't know whose decision it was, but they ended up being put on daytime Radio 1 in the afternoons. And then very briefly, they did the breakfast show, lasted about 3 months, and they got fired. But when they did the afternoon show, they had to pad it out with something. So they started doing covers of bands. And Mark Riley, I think he played guitar and bass in the Fall. I think he alternated. Mark Radcliffe is a really good drummer. He's Noddy Holder's drummer. So, they are proper musicians, but the production, part of the humour was that the production was so bad. So absolutely awful. And this is another track that when I played it, when I was clipping it, my wife heard it in the other room and burst out laughing, because the ending on this, I can still remember the first time I heard the ending of this track, and it caught me by surprise. It made me laugh so much. Now, I've hyped it up, and it's shit. Just to prepare you, it's awful, and I'll just shut up and just press play. The Shirehorses with You're a Bastard.
For you. Look, you're a bastard, and you're a bastard too. You're a bastard. 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 No, I'm not. Yes, you are. 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 Because you're going home in a f***ing ambulance.
Just at the end, you see this. I don't know, but God, I don't. There's what needs to be explained about that. Hey, just they do two different versions of "You're Gorgeous" by Baby Bird on the same album, but it's so ropey. It's so bad. But I thought it would date really badly, because this was early 2000s, and they're all covers of songs that this is like the Britpop thing, when that had really taken hold and become the establishment rather than the underground. But it's just nonsense. And that was on East West as well. That was on a big label.
That must have been some A&R guy gone rogue. Fuck this. Fuck all this. I'm just going to sign the stupidest, funniest things I can, because fucking what's fuck all this. It's
You're painting the picture as like someone having like a Jerry Maguire type breakdown, and instead of writing a manifesto for improving the music business, I'm going to sign these two silly Manchester DJs.
People, it's like there's an aspect like, fuck it. People buy it. People buy anything. Fucking cunts.
People bought the album. They supported some fairly big bands. They didn't last very long.
Hey, I watched a film about watched a biopic about Weird Al this year, and I think
what's that like?
It's a lot of fun. It's stupid as hell. Mark Radcliffe, all power to him, because he seems to have made his money with Harry Potter.
No, Daniel Radcliffe. Just to be clear, Mark Radcliffe was not Harry Potter.
Fair play. I never watched Harry Potter stuff, but Daniel.
In that case, it is Mark Radcliffe, that guy who was just in the Shirehorses.
Daniel Radcliffe seems to have made a lot of money with Harry Potter, and then decided that he doesn't, he doesn't need to make more money. He'll take the Harry Potter stuff very seriously. Everything else, he'll do what he fancies. Apparently, his girlfriend threatened to break up with him if he didn't take the role.
Really? What, the Weird Al role?
Yeah. So, we've managed to get through an episode of this without talking about Weird Al or Neil Innes. who was the genius
Oh,
behind
local
the music
hero.
of the Ruffles. And I think both of you probably didn't go for it because we thought both of them were too obvious. And Weird Al is too obvious. And Neil Innes is probably too obvious to any sort of British music fan. But they write beautiful lyrics, and Neil Innes particularly writes amazing songs. Because Weird Al only rewrites the stuff a little bit, probably to avoid copyright laws.
Neil Innes, the end of his life, well, for most of his life, lived in Ipswich, well, actually in Felixstowe, which is really, really close. And he used to, in Z, we played an all-dayer at a ropey, scary, terrifying pub. And Neil Innes was the headliner, which unfortunately we had to go. I didn't get to see him, but no, he was proper regular. When the Ruttles reformed, probably only about a year or two before he died, they played at the Smokehouse, which is a 60 capacity venue here, because two of the members of the band were friends of mine who were like local session musicians. So no, Neil Innes, I'd be quite interesting to do an episode on him because I'd like to learn more about him. I just sort of probably took him for granted a bit, really, if I'm honest. I don't think he would.
I love the Bonzo dude. I mean, again, we didn't do anything about the Bonzo, but Bonzo are, I'd say, they were
Bonzo
more
Dog
of an art.
Doodah Band.
Yeah, they were.
I just like saying that.
They were probably more of an art project in some ways, and they did comedy music, but I wouldn't call them parody. Bits and pieces of them were parody. Anyway, but back to this track. Yeah, I mean, what a good version, actually.
A good version of what?
Of You're Gorgeous.
I wouldn't say it's a sitting down in a quiet evening kind of album, but the first Shirehorse album is worth listening to. It's just such a joy at poking fun at what was becoming a scene that was quite swiftly disappearing up its own arse. It's quite fun. It's that reset thing. Hey, look, we've done a loop. We've come back to the original point you made, like we're fucking professionals or something.
Ah, yes. This is okay. Our theory, and should anybody care to disprove it, is parody music is a necessary reset or a necessary self-reflection of scenes that probably have taken far too much cocaine and have far too much money in them.
If you disagree, then we don't give a shit. Anyway, I think we ought to end on a high point. So I'm going to say goodbye, Sam. Do you want to say goodbye?
Goodbye, Andrew.
Bunker bye. Is that what you said?
Goodbye, Andrew.
Okay, bunker bye, Sam. Bunker bye.